Omega was forced to hold a lantern alone until Alpha King asked who hid the flame in her pulse. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. Emma Blake stood alone in the center of the crowded courtyard, her small frame nearly lost beneath the heavy glow of the lantern she was forced to hold. The light flickered uncertainly in her trembling hands, casting long shadows that seemed to mock her every move. A low hum of laughter rippled through the crowd, each chuckle like a sting to her already wounded heart. She was the Omega, the weakest among them, bound to the pack but never truly accepted. The Alpha Kings, the Betas, and even the other Omegas all had their own place in the world, but Emma had nothing. Her scent was faint, hardly noticeable to those who were meant to sense her presence. Without the power to shift, without the ability to prove herself worthy, she was nothing more than a ghost in her own pack. It had started as a simple task: hold the lantern. But to Emma, it felt like a sentence. No one had stepped forward to offer her a helping hand. No one had come to her defense. She stood there, a pawn in a cruel game, her heart sinking with every passing second. The night air grew colder, and the weight of the lantern seemed to grow heavier with each mocking glance. She could feel the eyes of her packmates on her, those who whispered about her behind her back and laughed at her face. Emma's fingers tightened around the cold metal handle, the warmth of the flame offering little comfort against the sting of rejection. As she stood there, feeling the sting of her own helplessness, a ripple of silence washed over the crowd. The air shifted, the atmosphere thickening with an energy she couldn't ignore. It was as if the very ground beneath her feet trembled with the arrival of someone. And then, through the sea of onlookers, a figure emerged. Tall, commanding, and undeniably powerful. His dark eyes locked onto hers, cutting through the crowd like a blade. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she caught sight of him, the Alpha King, Alexander Thornridge. He had never come to one of these gatherings before, always standing apart from the pack, watching from the shadows. But tonight he was here, and he was looking right at her. His steps were deliberate, his presence undeniable, and the pack fell into a hushed silence as he made his way toward her. Emma's breath caught in her throat, the light from the lantern flickering as her pulse quickened. The mocking laughter, the stares, the whispers, they all faded into the background as Alexander stopped before her. His gaze softened for just a moment, a flicker of something she couldn't place in the depths of his eyes. He spoke, his voice low but commanding. Who hid the flame in her pulse? The words hung in the air like a challenge, a question meant for the entire pack to hear. Emma stood frozen, her mind racing. For the first time, she felt like something more than just the Omega. She felt seen, not just by Alexander, but by the pack around her. The lantern shook in her hands, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from the rush of something new, something she had never felt before. Power. Recognition. The flame in her pulse wasn't just the lantern, it was something inside of her. And Alexander Thornridge, the Alpha King, had just given her the chance to see it. The murmurs began to swirl around them, but Emma didn't care. Alexander's hand reached out, the warmth of his touch brushing against hers as he gently steadied the lantern. And in that moment, everything changed. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as Alexander's presence loomed over her, his eyes locking with hers in a way that sent shivers down her spine. The weight of his gaze was like a tangible force, but there was no cruelty in it. Only something deeper, something Emma couldn't quite name, but it made her feel something she hadn't in a long time seen. The lantern in her hands no longer felt like a burden. Her fingers, once trembling with uncertainty, now gripped it with a strange sense of purpose. As if the flame inside her pulse had sparked to life with his words. Alexander stepped closer, the sound of his boots against the stone floor echoing in the silent courtyard. The pack members around them stood frozen, watching the exchange with bated breath. Emma could feel the eyes of her packmates upon her, but for the first time, their stares didn't burn with mockery. They were full of confusion, curiosity, and something else. Respect. Alexander's hand reached out, his fingers brushing against hers as he gently adjusted the lantern she was holding. The touch, though light, sent a surge of warmth through her, and Emma couldn't help but feel a pull deep inside her. It was as though she were being drawn toward him, not just physically, but in some inexplicable way that connected their souls. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice steady and commanding. The power in his tone was undeniable, but there was no malice in it. "Emma Blake," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, though it felt strange to speak her name aloud after so long in the shadows. Alexander's lips curled into a slight smile, a rare expression of amusement crossing his face. "Emma Blake," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "You've hidden much from us, haven't you?" The words hung in the air, thick with implication. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Hidden much? She didn't understand what he meant. She was just a simple omega, weak and insignificant in the eyes of her pack. She began, but the words failed her. She wanted to ask him what he meant, why he was looking at her like that, but she couldn't find her voice. Alexander's eyes softened, as if sensing her confusion. "You are more than you know, Emma," he said quietly, almost to himself. "And it's time the world knew it too." Emma felt a strange warmth flood her chest at his words, like a spark igniting something long buried inside her. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. She wasn't sure she even understood what was happening between them, but she felt something shifting, something awakening. Before she could respond, the Alpha King turned to address the crowd. "This Omega," he said, his voice carrying over the stillness, "will no longer be treated as lesser. She will be recognized for what she is, powerful, strong, and worthy of respect." The pack members stirred, some murmuring among themselves, others standing in stunned silence. Emma's pulse quickened, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something else. Something that felt like hope, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Alexander's gaze returned to her, intense and unwavering. "You are mine, Emma, and I will protect you, no matter what," he declared. The weight of his words settled over her like a blanket, comforting yet commanding. And in that moment, Emma realized that her life, her fate, had changed forever. The lantern she held was no longer a symbol of her burden, but of her newfound purpose, a beacon for what was to come. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as Alexander's presence loomed over her, his eyes locking with hers in a way that sent shivers down her spine. The weight of his gaze was like a tangible force, but there was no cruelty in it. Only something deeper, something Emma couldn't quite name, but it made her feel something she hadn't in a long time seen. The lantern in her hands no longer felt like a burden. Her fingers, once trembling with uncertainty, now gripped it with a strange sense of purpose. As if the flame inside her pulse had sparked to life with his words. Alexander stepped closer, the sound of his boots against the stone floor echoing in the silent courtyard. The pack members around them stood frozen, watching the exchange with bated breath. Emma could feel the eyes of her packmates upon her, but for the first time, their stares didn't burn with mockery. They were full of confusion, curiosity, and something else, respect. Alexander's hand reached out, his fingers brushing against hers as he gently adjusted the lantern she was holding. The touch, though light, sent a surge of warmth through her, and Emma couldn't help but feel a pull deep inside her. It was as though she were being drawn toward him, not just physically, but in some inexplicable way that connected their souls. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice steady and commanding. The power in his tone was undeniable, but there was no malice in it. "Emma Blake," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, though it felt strange to speak her name aloud after so long in the shadows. Alexander's lips curled into a slight smile, a rare expression of amusement crossing his face. "Emma Blake," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "You've hidden much from us, haven't you?" The words hung in the air, thick with implication. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Hidden much? She didn't understand what he meant. She was just a simple omega, weak and insignificant in the eyes of her pack. She began, but the words failed her. She wanted to ask him what he meant, why he was looking at her like that, but she couldn't find her voice. Alexander's eyes softened, as if sensing her confusion. "You are more than you know, Emma," he said quietly, almost to himself. "And it's time the world knew it too." Emma felt a strange warmth flood her chest at his words, like a spark igniting something long buried inside her. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. She wasn't sure she even understood what was happening between them, but she felt something shifting, something awakening. Before she could respond, the Alpha King turned to address the crowd. "This Omega," he said, his voice carrying over the stillness, "will no longer be treated as lesser. She will be recognized for what she is, powerful, strong, and worthy of respect." The pack members stirred, some murmuring among themselves, others standing in stunned silence. Emma's pulse quickened, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something else, something that felt like hope, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Alexander's gaze returned to her, intense and unwavering. "You are mine, Emma, and I will protect you, no matter what," he declared. The weight of his words settled over her like a blanket, comforting yet commanding. And in that moment, Emma realized that her life, her fate, had changed forever. The lantern she held was no longer a symbol of her burden, but of her newfound purpose, a beacon for what was to come. Emma stood there, her mind racing as Alexander's words echoed in her ears. His declaration had shaken her to her core, and yet, deep within, she felt a warmth spread through her, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She had always been invisible, always overlooked, never worthy of anything more than ridicule and rejection. But now, in the presence of Alexander, the Alpha King, it felt like she was being seen for the first time in her life. The crowd around them began to stir, murmurs spreading like wildfire. The pack members, once so quick to mock her, were now watching her with a mix of curiosity and awe. Emma could feel their eyes on her, but this time, they didn't burn with judgment. They were full of something else, something she had never expected: respect. "You'll be tested, Emma." Alexander's voice cut through the silence, pulling her attention back to him. "Your strength will be tested, your resolve. But know this, no one will ever look down on you again." Emma's breath hitched as his words sank in. The weight of them, the promise behind them, was more than she could fully comprehend. She wasn't just an Omega anymore, not in his eyes. She was something more, something powerful. Alexander stepped closer, his presence enveloping her. He was an Alpha, a king, and yet, when he stood before her, his gaze softened, and for a fleeting moment, Emma saw the man behind the title. A man who was strong, yet vulnerable in ways he probably didn't allow anyone else to see. "Come with me," Alexander said, his voice calm but firm. "Let's leave this place. It's time you saw the world for what it truly is." Without thinking, Emma nodded. Her heart raced, but it wasn't from fear anymore. It was from anticipation, from the overwhelming sense that everything was about to change. She followed Alexander, her steps uncertain but determined. As they moved through the crowd, she could feel the eyes of the pack on her, but this time, it didn't matter. She was no longer the girl who had been discarded, the one who had been cast aside and forgotten. She was walking beside the Alpha King, and she was about to discover a world she had only ever dreamed of. The moonlight bathed the path before them, casting everything in a soft, ethereal glow. It felt like they were leaving behind the darkness of the past, stepping into something new, something bright. Emma's heart beat faster as they reached the edge of the courtyard. She couldn't shake the feeling that everything she had known, everything she had believed about herself, was shifting in that moment. Alexander paused, turning to her with a knowing look. "You're not just my mate, Emma," he said softly. "You are the key to something far greater than either of us. The world will soon know your name, and they will know you as I do, as something extraordinary." Emma could hardly believe what she was hearing. How could this be real? How could she, someone who had always been overlooked, now stand at the center of such power? But looking into Alexander's eyes, she knew there was truth in his words. He believed in her. And for the first time in her life, Emma believed in herself too. Emma walked beside Alexander through the quiet night, the cool air brushing against her skin as the moonlight bathed the path ahead. The sound of her footsteps matched the rhythm of his, a steady, comforting beat that seemed to echo in her chest. For the first time, Emma felt like she belonged somewhere, like she was no longer a shadow in her own life. As they walked, Alexander's presence felt all-encompassing, not overwhelming, but grounding. She could feel the power radiating off him, yet there was a softness to him that she hadn't expected. She had heard the stories of alpha kings, ruthless, untouchable, cold. But Alexander was different. There was a depth to him that wasn't just about dominance and strength. It was a quiet understanding, as if he could see the parts of her she had long buried. They arrived at a small, secluded garden, where the air smelled of wildflowers and fresh grass. The peacefulness of the place contrasted sharply with the chaos Emma had felt in the courtyard. Here, in this hidden corner of the world, she felt safe. "This is where I come when I need to think," Alexander said, his voice low as he turned to her. "It's a place of clarity, a place where nothing is expected of me. Just space to breathe." Emma nodded, understanding more than she could put into words. She had never had a place like that, never had a moment to herself where she could just be. It had always been about what others thought of her, what they expected her to be. "I never imagined I would be here," Emma said, her voice quiet but firm. "I never imagined any of this would happen." Alexander gave her a small smile, his eyes softening. "You never imagined it because you were never meant to," he replied. "The world had a different plan for you, Emma. One that you've only just begun to discover." She looked up at him, her heart racing in her chest. He spoke as though he knew everything about her, as though he could see the woman she was becoming before she even realized it herself. And for the first time, Emma felt a sense of purpose. She had always thought she was destined to remain in the background, never seen, never heard. But now, beside Alexander, she could see the possibility of something greater, something more than she had ever allowed herself to dream. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander's gaze met hers, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. "Now, we move forward," he said, his voice steady and confident. "Now, we begin the journey of discovering who you truly are, no longer defined by your past, but by what you choose to become." Emma felt a surge of emotion rise within her, a mix of hope and uncertainty. The path ahead was unknown, but for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She felt ready, ready to face whatever came next, with Alexander by her side. The lantern she had held earlier, the one that had once symbolized her isolation, now felt like a symbol of light, a light that was slowly beginning to grow within her. And with each step she took beside Alexander, that light grew brighter, stronger. The world she had known was behind her, and a new world was waiting, one where she could finally be herself. One where she could stand tall, not as the Omega who was rejected, but as the woman who was finally seen. The morning sun peeked through the trees as Emma stood at the edge of the small, peaceful garden. The night had brought clarity, but now the day was calling her forward. Alexander had said the world was waiting for her, but it felt like a heavy weight on her shoulders. She had spent her whole life hidden, overlooked, a mere shadow among others. How could she step into the light now, and what did that even mean for her? The gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze calmed her racing thoughts. She felt Alexander's presence behind her, steady and strong, like a constant anchor in the whirlwind of emotions she was still trying to make sense of. He had seen something in her, something no one else had. She didn't know what that meant yet, but the idea that she was worthy of his belief, of anyone's belief, was both thrilling and terrifying. "Emma." Alexander's voice broke through the quiet, a gentle command. She turned to face him, his expression unreadable, yet there was a softness in his gaze. "Come with me. There's something I need to show you." He extended his hand, and Emma hesitated for a moment, the instinct to pull away still strong, but then she took it. His touch, though firm, was warm and reassuring. As they walked through the garden, the sounds of the pack faded into the distance. Emma had no idea where they were headed, but she followed, trusting him more than she had trusted anyone before. They reached a small clearing surrounded by tall, ancient trees. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a soft glow over the space. Alexander stopped and turned to her, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her heart flutter in her chest. "This," he said, his voice low, "is where the truth lies. It's a place where our pasts don't define us. Where what we have here," he placed his hand over his heart, "is all that matters." Emma blinked, trying to process the weight of his words. Was he talking about the bond they shared? Or was this about something more? "I've lived my life for others, for the pack, for the title," Alexander continued, his voice growing softer. but I've never truly lived for myself. And I want you to live for yourself, Emma. To see what's possible when you step into who you truly are." His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Emma's pulse quickened as she took in the depth of his statement. She had always lived in the shadows, afraid to step into the light, afraid to be seen for who she was. But now, standing in this beautiful, secluded place with Alexander, she felt a shift, a spark of something new igniting inside her. She wasn't sure how to explain it, but it felt like the beginning of something important. Alexander stepped closer, his presence wrapping around her like a protective shield. "You are not just an Omega, Emma. You are more than that. More than you've ever been told." The certainty in his voice made her heart race. Could it be true? Could she really be more than the quiet, overlooked girl she had always believed herself to be? Emma didn't know, but for the first time, she felt like she was ready to find out. Alexander's hand rested on her shoulder, and the warmth of his touch grounded her. "I will help you find your strength, your purpose, but only if you're ready to accept it." Emma nodded slowly, her gaze never leaving his. The uncertainty that had gripped her so tightly was starting to loosen. The path ahead was still unclear, but for the first time, she was ready to walk it. Not as the girl she had been, but as the woman she was becoming. Alexander smiled, and for a brief moment, his fierce, commanding presence softened, revealing a man who truly believed in her. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle into her bones. This was it, the beginning of everything, and she was ready. As the days passed, Emma found herself standing at the threshold of a world she had only dreamed of, a world where she wasn't invisible, where she didn't have to hide in the shadows. With Alexander by her side, the once quiet Omega was beginning to feel the stirrings of a new identity taking shape, one that was powerful and unapologetic. She spent her mornings with him, walking through the forest near the castle, talking about things she never imagined she would, her hopes, her fears, her dreams. Alexander listened without judgment, his presence unwavering and kind. He didn't see her as weak or less than, but as someone with untapped strength, someone who had the potential to change everything. Each day, Emma felt more like herself. Her confidence grew as she learned to navigate this new world. She could feel the energy shifting around her, and she knew it was more than just the environment, it was her. Alexander had shown her that the power she sought wasn't something she had to find. It was always within her, waiting to be unleashed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Alexander brought her to a high tower that overlooked the entire kingdom. The view was breathtaking, and Emma could hardly believe how much had changed in such a short time. "This is where the future is decided," Alexander said softly, his gaze focused on the horizon. "From here, I can see everything that we've built, everything that's coming." Emma joined him at the edge of the tower, her heart racing at the weight of his words. She had been thrust into this world so suddenly, but now, standing here with Alexander, she could see the pieces of her life falling into place. The future wasn't just something she was walking into, it was something she was creating. "And what about me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where do I fit in all of this?" Alexander turned to her, his eyes intense, as if he were looking right through her. "You are part of it, Emma. More than that, you are the heart of it." His words made her heart skip a beat, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She had always thought she was just a small part of a much larger world, something that didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But here, now, with him, she felt like she was more than just a side character in someone else's story. She was the story. "You've always had the strength, Emma," Alexander continued, his voice low and steady. "It was just waiting for the right moment to awaken. And now that it has, there is nothing that can stop you." Emma swallowed hard, trying to wrap her mind around his words. She wasn't sure what this power was yet, but she could feel it. It was as though the world was waiting for her to step into her own and claim what was hers. Alexander took her hand gently, his touch warm and reassuring. "Together, we will build something that lasts," he said, his voice filled with certainty. Emma nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deep in her heart. The future was no longer something to fear. It was something to embrace. And as she stood beside Alexander, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them. The lantern she had once carried, trembling and uncertain, was now a symbol of the light she carried inside her. The flame that had flickered weakly was now burning bright, ready to guide her through whatever came next. As days turned into weeks, Emma's life began to shift in ways she had never thought possible. The weight that had once held her down, the invisible chains of rejection and doubt, seemed to loosen with each passing day. Alexander's presence was always there, a constant, unwavering support. He had shown her a world beyond the limitations she had once believed to be her fate, and now she could see herself in ways she never thought she could. Her mornings were spent with him, learning the ways of the pack, understanding the intricacies of the world that had once seemed so distant. But as much as Emma felt herself growing, there was still a part of her that questioned her place in this new reality. She was not just an Omega, not anymore, but she still didn't fully understand what that meant. One evening, as the golden hues of sunset bathed the castle in warmth, Alexander took her to the training grounds. The air was crisp, the ground firm beneath her feet. The pack was gathered, training for the challenges ahead, and Emma stood by Alexander's side, feeling the weight of the moment. "You have come so far, Emma," Alexander said, his voice soft but firm, as his eyes scanned the training area. "But there is still more for you to learn. It is time to face what lies within you." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had heard the rumors, the whispers of her potential, but it always felt like something distant, like a part of her that hadn't fully revealed itself yet. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander turned to her, his gaze intense. "It is time for you to discover your strength, Emma. The power that lies within you is not something that can be simply taught. It must be unlocked, awakened, and only you can do it." He stepped back, his expression unreadable. "I will be here, but this is your journey." Emma swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She had always felt different, but she had never known how to channel the feeling, the strange energy that seemed to surge within her at times. But now, standing here with Alexander, the thought of facing it didn't seem as daunting as it once did. With a deep breath, she stepped forward into the center of the training ground. The pack members watched, their eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and expectation. The air seemed to hum with energy as Emma closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself. She could feel something stirring, like a flame flickering to life inside her, warm and powerful. Slowly, she extended her hands, feeling the energy flow through her fingertips, growing stronger with each passing second. The ground beneath her feet seemed to vibrate, the air thickening as if responding to the force within her. Emma opened her eyes, and for the first time, she saw the power that had been lying dormant inside her. It was real, it was hers, and it was beautiful. She could feel it coursing through her veins, filling her with a sense of purpose and strength she had never known. Alexander stepped forward, his eyes locked on hers, filled with approval. "You have unlocked it, Emma," he said, his voice proud. "The power within you is yours to command. And now, you will no longer be the girl who hides in the shadows. You are a force to be reckoned with." Emma's heart swelled with emotion, the realization settling in that she was no longer the person she once was. She was something new, something powerful. And with Alexander by her side, there was nothing that could stand in her way. The pack members, once distant, now looked at her with respect, awe even. She was no longer just the Omega. She was a warrior, a leader, someone who would help shape the future of this world. And for the first time in her life, Emma truly believed it. The days that followed felt like a blur to Emma, her mind still racing from the revelation of her power. Every step she took seemed to carry more weight, more significance. She had unlocked something deep within herself, something that not only changed the way she saw the world, but also how the world now saw her. With Alexander by her side, she was no longer the Omega who had once been overlooked. She was something more, something she was still coming to understand. But despite the newfound strength coursing through her veins, there was an unease that lingered. The weight of responsibility was not one she had ever known, and the pack's expectations were ever present. She could feel their eyes on her as she walked through the halls of the castle, as if waiting for her to prove herself. But what did that even mean? What did it mean to be seen as something more than just a discarded soul in a world that had forgotten her? Alexander's presence was a constant reassurance, but Emma could still feel the doubts creeping in. One evening, as the stars began to appear in the sky, Alexander found her in the garden, standing alone, staring up at the heavens. He approached quietly, his footsteps muffled by the soft grass beneath him. "You're thinking too much," he said, his voice warm and familiar. Emma turned to face him, offering a small smile. "It's hard not to, with everything that's changing." Alexander stepped closer, his gaze softening. "Change can be overwhelming," he said. "But you don't have to carry it all at once. You are not alone in this." Emma's heart fluttered at his words. She had been so focused on the weight of her own transformation, on the expectations placed on her, that she had forgotten the most important part of it all. She wasn't alone. "I never thought I could be part of something bigger," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've always felt like I didn't belong. Like I was just waiting for the world to move on without me." Alexander placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch firm but gentle. "You've always belonged, Emma. You just had to find your place in it. And now, the world will move with you, not without you." She could feel the sincerity in his words, the truth of them washing over her like a wave. For the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She didn't feel like the girl who had been cast aside. She felt like she had purpose. She felt like she mattered. Alexander's hand remained on her shoulder as they stood together in the quiet of the garden, the moonlight illuminating their surroundings. "I'll be here," he said softly. "Every step of the way. We'll figure this out together." Emma's heart swelled with emotion as she met his gaze. She had found more than just a partner in him. She had found someone who believed in her, someone who saw her for who she truly was. And for the first time in her life, Emma allowed herself to believe in herself too. The future was no longer a distant, frightening concept. It was something she could shape, something she could own. With Alexander by her side, and the power she had awakened within herself, she was ready for whatever came next. She wasn't just the Omega anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with, and the world was waiting to see it.